So how does a family business, an industrial dynasty that armed one of the most monstrous regimes in history, not only survive, but walk away with all its money? It's an incredible story. Today, we're looking at Hitler's steel giants, the Krupp legacy.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the big question here, isn't it? How could a family that was so deeply tied to the horrors of the Third Reich, how could they not just survive, but actually come out of it even richer? I mean, it sounds totally impossible, but it happened.
And look, let's be absolutely clear about what we're talking about when we say complicit. This number right here, 55,000. That's how many slave laborers the Krupp Empire exploited. We're talking about men, women, even children, forced to build weapons for their own oppressors in just the most horrific conditions. So yeah, this story isn't just about money. It's built on a foundation of unbelievable human suffering.
Okay, so to really understand how they got away with it, we have to first get our heads around just how indestructible this industrial empire was. Seriously, its ability to survive just about anything, it's kind of mind-boggling.
You know, the Krupp factories weren't just some company that got caught up in things. No, they were the main weapons maker for the Nazis. Their artillery, their tanks, that was the backbone of the entire war machine. So after Germany's total and complete defeat, you'd expect them to be gone, right? Dismantled, leaders in disgrace, the whole deal. But the exact opposite happened. They rebuilt, they thrived, and they actually became a cornerstone of Germany's famous post-war economic miracle. So just how deep did this collaboration really go? Was this just a case of a big company being forced to play along with a totalitarian government? Well, the evidence, it points to something way more deliberate than that. Yeah, this was no forced marriage. It was a conscious choice, a partnership that just got deeper and deeper over time. I mean, look at this timeline. As early as 1933, the family was actually bankrolling Hitler's rise to power. By 36, they were right at the heart of Germany's secret rearmament program, totally breaking international treaties. And by 1943, when the war was at its absolute peak, their entire operation was running on the backs of forced labor. This wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate, decade-long alliance. And they weren't just a supplier to the Nazis. They were the supplier. People called the Krupp works the arsenal of the Third Reich. And that wasn't just some catchy nickname. It was literally true. Let's be real. Without Krupp's steel, without their cannons, without their tanks, Hitler's war machine simply doesn't happen. They were absolutely essential. So really, it all boils down to this one simple, damning fact. The Krupp family armed the Nazi regime. They didn't just go along with it. They actively, willingly, and very profitably built the weapons for them. Okay, with a mountain of evidence like that, you think justice would be a sure thing, right? Inevitable. But this is where the story takes its most unbelievable turn. This is how they got away. The difference between the charges and the actual outcome here is, well, it's just staggering. At the famous Nuremberg trials, the head of the family, Alfred Krupp, was facing charges for crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming. He got a 12-year sentence. But get this, he only served 6. And the most incredible part? When he got out, his entire family fortune and total control of the company were just handed right back to him. So you have to be asking, how on earth did that happen? Well, the answer is all about politics. The world was changing, fast. The alliance that had defeated Hitler was already breaking apart. The Cold War was starting. And all of a sudden, the top priority for the Western Allies wasn't punishing old enemies. It was building a strong West Germany to act as a shield against the Soviet Union. And in that new world, a powerful industrialist like Krupp, well, he wasn't a criminal anymore. He was an asset. So he got a general pardon, and basically, the need for German steel became more important than the need for justice. But you know, this story about Alfred Krupp getting a slap on the wrist, it's not just about one guy. It tells us something much bigger about how power, money, and history all work together. And this is really the heart of it all. Political systems, even terrifyingly powerful ones like the Third Reich, they come and they go. But these massive industrial dynasties with their incredible economic power, they can be a lot harder to get rid of. They can adapt, they can switch sides, find new allies, and in the end, they can outlast the very governments they helped build. So, if we boil it all down, what are the big takeaways? First, huge industrial power isn't loyal to any one ideology. It's just a tool that can serve whoever's in charge.
Second, something like justice can get tossed aside when the political landscape changes and new enemies pop up. And third, maybe most important, is that this kind of dynastic power, the kind that's passed down from generation to generation, it's just incredibly, incredibly resilient. And that brings us to one last pretty big question for today. The Krupp story might be history, but the patterns, they don't really go away. So when you look around the world right now, at all the huge fortunes and massive corporations that are tied up with governments, you have to wonder, right? Which of those dynasties will still be around long after the political maps we know today have been completely redrawn?